I found some more Easter eggs that I bet you missed in Sinners. Now, I could be wrong, so correct me in the comments if you think I got this wrong. But this film is just so rich and multi layered. There's just so much going on in this film. If you do a deep dive on this film like I did after watching it 3 times, you'll find out that Coogler spent 4 years researching this film before he even made it. And so, yeah, there's a lot in here, and it's not accidental, it's not coincidence. There's a lot of hidden symbols and meanings in this film. So, I want to talk about Delta Slim, who's a really important character in this film. So, Delta Slim is a blues player, and he's one of the elders in the film. And he ends up being a really important character for helping us to understand the history and the genesis of the blues. So the blues is an African American art form which originated in this country, exists nowhere else, and it's one of the things that really makes the United States music scene unique. A lot of American music can be traced to African American art forms like the blues and jazz, and that includes rock and certain types of folk music. And country. But I digress. Let's get back to Delta Slim. So Delta Slim tells the story of the blues in a really pivotal kind of just incredible scene when they're in the car and he starts to tell a story about his friends. It's a really sad story about what happened to his friends, and we see some of them on the side of the road, and then he talks about another one who was unalived. And what the story that he tells explains for us is the genesis of the blues. And so I can't really go into detail about the story because, algorithms and whatnot. But there's a story about something terrible that happens, a type of unaliving that was Ray Ray in origin, that happens to his friend. And this happens at a train station. And I think that's significant for the Easter egg I want to talk about, because he tells this story about this, horrific history of Mississippi, which is really the history of the United States. But he's telling you about this one person who was the victim of a crime. And it gives us a look into like the whole history of what it means to be African American in the United States. And then the really dramatic part, the really, oh God, just perfect encapsulation of the genesis of the blues happens when he tells this story and then he starts patting his leg, right? And moaning in pain because of the incredible agony of this story. And then that patting turns into a rhythm, and that moaning turns into humming, and that turns into a song, a blues song. And then they asked Sammy to join in with his guitar, and now they're singing a song. And this just perfectly explains the history of the blues in just a very short amount of space. This is the history of the blues, this incredible art form born out of suffering by people who have endured centuries of mistreatment. Okay, so where's the Easter egg, right? I'm getting to it. So this is the Easter egg. You can tell me if you don't agree, but he's at the train station, right? And this is when Stack and Sammy walk up, and he's introduced to them, and they're, that's his spot. That's where he always plays. That's where he busks. And in fact, Sammy tries to pull out his guitar, and Delta's like, "Dude, you better not." This is my spot, right? So as a musician, he has a regular spot that he always plays where he, busks or collects money for his music. And he also goes to the same juke joint every week to perform, and has been doing so for 10 years. So this is a guy who's a creature of habit. So this is how I'm building my case for this Easter egg. So as the camera is showing you Delta Slim's, spot where he plays and the people on the train station, they pan to the train behind him, right where his spot is. And it's called the Mississippi Delta Line. And I just feel like that's letting us know that he got this nickname because of this location. Because this location, the Mississippi Delta train, is where this terrible thing happened to his friend, and it's had a permanent effect on him, right? That's why he drinks for the rest of his life. He can't, get that out of his mind, that terrible memory, and so he's like still there in that same spot where his friend died, and he's been marked by it with the name Delta. So what do you think? Was that an Easter egg that Cooler put in there, that Mississippi Delta sign, that Mississippi Delta line, right where he's playing his instrument? Tell me if you agree.